what happened in the last 15 years to bring this about?
I mean, I think, first of all, of course, Mr. Modi has a central role in it. But I don't think it's only Mr. Modi. And I also don't think that it started in 2014. The general dynamics, the architecture and the forces that eventually got Mr. Modi are older. They just combined well in 2014. And I think India has had this fight. Modern India has had it embedded in it, the fight for and against the constitution. And that's really the heart of it. The idea that all Indians should be equal, all Indians should be valued and treated in the same way versus a hierarchy. And the idea that, there is a hierarchy in India, a caste hierarchy, and that should be defended at all costs. So this is the conflict, and it's not a new conflict. I mean, if you go back in Indian history, you can go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, you'll see this conflict. And it's a philosophical battle, and then it has its political structures. So
your family, I mean, I know everybody here will know, but it bears repeating. Your father was Prime Minister, your grandmother, Indira Gandhi, was Prime Minister, your great-grandfather, Jawaharlal Nehru, was leader of the independence movement and the first Prime Minister of post-colonial India, the greatest and the longest-serving Prime Minister. And your great-great-grandfather, Motilal Nehru, was obviously co-founder of Congress and therefore of the independence movement. There's nobody better than you, and looking back at your family history and at the sort of dramatic saga of India post-independence and pre-independence, to sort of stand back and ask, well, were there moments where, because your party was so much the natural party of government, that it became complacent, that it wittingly or unwittingly helped pave the way for this extraordinary period of Hindutva, which we'll get onto in a moment, may be receding, may or may not be receding, but is the self-analysis Congress should do, even now, to figure out how we got here?
No, look, politics ebbs and flows, right? And it's a contest, it's a competition, and you go up and down in that competition, and that's just part of it. I think the way I view it, that this has given us and the India alliance as a whole a lot of space to think about how we go forward. I think the politics in India has fundamentally changed. And so, from our perspective, what we see, and some people would agree and some people would disagree, but what we see is that there's a clash of visions. We don't agree with Mr. Modi's vision. We fight it. And for us, we are trying to now put in place the basic foundation, the basic building block of a new vision for the country. And the Congress Party has periodically done this. It's not the Congress Party. I mean, if you look at the Congress Party and you compare it to other political parties,
hey Aditya,
it has this ability to reinvent itself, right? So you look at the 70s, the Congress Party nationalizes the banks, and then it does a complete U-turn, in the 90s, and then is going with liberalization, with open economic architecture. So I think there's a design element in the Congress Party that has been put in place by Mahatma Gandhi, and it has certain qualities as a political organization which are very powerful. I mean, I was watching the elections, and there was a point in the elections when we sat down with our treasurer, and he was saying, look, the bank accounts are frozen. Now, how are you supposed to fight an election if your bank accounts are frozen? And so we were like, okay, we're done. That was the reaction, and we really didn't have an answer. But then the Congress Party fought an election with their bank accounts frozen, and has basically destroyed the idea of Modi, right? So it has, and you can see it because when you see the Prime Minister now in Parliament, and I come face to face with him, he's psychologically trapped, and he basically cannot come to terms. He cannot understand how this has happened, right? So it's, for me, sitting in the Congress Party and watching it is quite an amazing thing, because it's a political party, but then it's a whole set of ideas. And now looking back, I realized that the Congress Party fought the British Empire. And there's a reason the thing survived that. And it's in the basic architecture of the party. Now, sometimes the party goes away from that architecture. So I differentiate between the Congress idea, the Congress philosophy, value system, and the party organization. And they don't necessarily 100% overlap. But when they start coming close, then it starts to become very powerful.
Okay, let's get into the election. As you say, it was not fought on a level playing field. I think it's fair to observe with your frozen bank accounts what's happened to my profession, the media in India, is quite dramatic. Restrictions. And of course, you had a prime minister who was expecting not just a hat trick, not just a third consecutive victory, but to lift his majority from what I think it was 303 he had in the last Lok Sabha out of 543, a clear majority, to 370 up to 400, a super majority. And in the event, gets 240. Now, with your bank accounts frozen and the media playing field not being level and all the rest, how do you explain this? Is this because you formed this India alliance and had essentially power sharing of who ran where? Is it because the fruits of growth really weren't trickling down to most Indians in what is objectively a very high growing economy? Or was it a more principled thing, backlash against Hindu nationalism? Was it all of these or something I haven't mentioned?
No, multiple things came together, right? So, for example, prior to the election, we kept stressing on the idea that the institutions have been captured. And whenever we'd go, India Alliance would go, we'd stress on this idea that, look, the institutions are captured and we don't have a fair playing field. The education system is captured by the RSS. The media system is captured. The investigative agencies are captured. And we keep saying this, and people were not quite getting it. And we would keep saying it again and again and again, and somehow they were just not getting it. And we couldn't understand why, because we were like, it's obvious to us, it's obvious to them, and something wasn't working. And then in one meeting, one of the people who works with us said, listen, try holding up the Constitution. And so I started holding up the Constitution. And everything we had said suddenly just exploded. So India realized in this election, and really I mean, not to divide it so crudely, but poor India, disenfranchised India, oppressed India, that India, it understood that if the constitution goes, the whole game is gone. And so that was the first sort of, I saw it, there was a shockwave, that when I would hold up the constitution, it would go. Like I could see the shockwave going, that people are like, oh yeah. And then people started coming to me, when you're in these meetings, you'll start hearing from the sides that, they'll bring a constitution or they'll start saying it. So what was very interesting to me was poor people deeply understood that now this was a fight between those who are protecting the constitution and those who want to destroy it. So that was one very strong element. There was also the caste census issue that became big. And that's a fundamental question in India. Share, what you say in Hindi, bhagidari, of the institutions, the structure, the power of the Indian state. So these things suddenly started to come together. And at some level, I was frankly blown away by the wisdom of India. Like I would sometimes sit there and say, this is quite amazing, right? There was like a wall that suddenly arrived and said, okay, we are not backing down now. And really, I don't think the BJP, in a fair election, they were nowhere near 240 seats. No way. I mean, I'd be surprised if they had a financial, huge financial advantage. They had locked our bank accounts for one, but huge war chest. The election commission was doing what they wanted. I mean, the entire campaign was structured so Mr. Modi could, do his thing across the country. States where they were weak were designed differently than states where they were strong. So I don't view it as a free election at all. I view it as a rather controlled election.
What's your confidence? But clearly your goal now is to win the next election. And it struck me there's one of two ways, maybe both, that this could come about. One is that Modi is like, he's no longer godlike, as you say. He's sort of dented. He's down. He's not out, but he's down. Psychologically quite harmed, expecting this affirmation of his being above ordinary political mortals and not getting it. And that might lead to splits, infighting within the BJP. He's got no obvious successor, right?
My analysis is different.
Okay.
My sense, halfway through the campaign, was that Modi didn't think he was getting anywhere near 300, 400 seats. And I think early on he realized that this thing's going wrong, right? And we were getting inputs from the regular sources. Some of the intelligence agencies were also, we were getting some of that information. It was pretty clear that they were in trouble. And so there was this internal thing going on in the Prime Minister that I could see. And psychologically, that how is this now happening? Because he's a person, as you know, he was in Gujarat many years, never faced political adversity, then Prime Minister of India, and suddenly this idea started to crack. And we knew when he said that, I speak directly to God, we knew that there had been that we had actually blown him apart, right? And that the psychology had gone. And so people think that, well, this was the Prime Minister sort of saying that, look, I'm special, I'm unique, and I talk to God. But that's not how we saw it. Internally, we saw it as a psychological collapse that, what's happened here? How is this thing not working? And it's not just the Prime Minister, it's deeper than that. So what has happened in India, and you'll see it, is that the coalition that brought Mr. Modi to power has collapsed. It's broken right down the middle, right? So you'll see in these elections that they will struggle. They will struggle, yeah. Because the basic idea that Mr. Modi is running a government for the people of India is gone. Now the idea has been replaced. 2-3 ideas have replaced it. Number one, that there is a huge nexus between the government and 2 or 3 really large businesses. 2, that the lower castes, particularly the OBCs and the Dalits, have been taken for a ride. And this is a very strong right across the board. And I mean, we poll it, we can see it.
You promised during the campaign a caste census so that you could then update the share of public sector jobs. Well, you could expand the share of public sector jobs reserved for lower castes.
See, there's the elephant in the room, right? Is when we talk about capture of institutions, when we talk about businesses, when we talk about the media, the elephant in the room is that 90% of India, OBCs, Dalits, Adivasis, they don't play the game. They're not even in the game, right? And that's really the elephant in the room. So the caste census is a simple exercise. And actually, it's more than the caste census. Caste census is one of 3 ideas. It's a simple exercise to say, okay, we've been, we got independence 1947. We've been going for a while now. Let's see how have the lower castes, backward castes, Dalits, how have they integrated into this system? What is it actually that they're participating in? And frankly, we've got the data. We've done our homework, we've got the data. And I can tell you, out of the top 200 businesses in India, right, there's almost no ownership of 90% of the population. I can tell you that in the highest courts of the country, there's almost no participation of 90% of India. I can tell you that in the media, national media, anchors, journalists, there is 0 participation of lower caste, OBCs, Dalits, Adivasis, right? So, and the people know this. It's not that this is not known. The large mass of people understand this, and they look at India and they say, okay, where is our participation? And the idea of the caste census is simple. We've not taken any policy position. We're just saying, look, we want to understand, we want a snapshot to understand where we at. What is the participation level of lower caste, Dalits, OBCs, poor general castes, right? And that's really the caste census. Now, there are 2 other components, which we've also said, but have not really been put out that much. One is the idea of a socio-economic survey. So we want to not only understand how many Dalits there are, how many OBCs there are, but we want to understand what their social position looks like, what their financial position looks like, what their economic position looks like. And the third component, which I think is very important, is we also want to understand, we want to take a look at India's institutions. We want to look at the media, we want to look at healthcare, we want to look at education, the owners, the structures that deliver these services. And we want to get a sense of what is India's participation in these institutions. So these are an institutional survey, a socio-economic survey, and a census.
Is there any reason why you wouldn't expand that to include the role of Muslims in modern?
They're included in that. It's not just Muslims.
Included in the OBC.
It's minorities. No, it's everybody. It's okay. Even if you look at the general caste, you will find that there is a huge divide between poor general castes and well-off general castes, right? And That's the same for minorities, it's the same for Adivasis, it's the same for OBCs, it's the same for Dalits.
I mean, the reason I pressed you on that is because older people in this audience, and maybe some of the younger ones, will remember in 1992 when VP Singh's government announced it's expanding the government reservation system to other backward classes, to not just Dalits. That's when L.K. Advani, the BJP leader, launched his Rath Yatra on Ayodhya, which resulted in the vandalism, the destruction of the Babri Masjid. So there is this sort of chemical interaction between caste and Hindutva reacting against it, mostly upper caste-led Hindutva. So you confident of the politics of this? I mean, because this has a history, right?
Look, from our perspective, if we talk about a nation that is going to progress, and if we talk about India becoming a modern nation, we have to ask the question about participation of 90% of our population. We can't just ignore it, right? There's just no way we can ignore it. Because frankly, if we go down this path, it's not sustainable, right? So it's not a question of caste or religion or Hindutva or anything else. It's a question of fairness. I frankly, as a politician, I don't want to live in a country where 90% of the people do not have access to opportunity. I'm not interested. So that's my position. And of course, many people would disagree with it. Many people would say, and the BJP and the RSS do say, that look, don't ask this question. Let a small minority of people just take all the fruits of the country. Now that's the fight, right? I mean, Mr. Adani and Mr. Ambani are a small component of that. They're a huge component in the business world, but they're a small component if you look at the entire picture.
Mm-hmm. I want to keep an eye on the time because I want to leave at least 20 minutes for questions. So we've got a couple more from me, if I may. Let me play.
Can I just say one
Yes.
more thing? I'm of the view, and I think most people who are involved in this will agree with me, that this is now an unstoppable idea. So if somebody thinks that now they are going to stop 90% of India from asking these questions, from demanding a census, from asking the question about how much participation do they have in our institutional structure, I don't think it's going to work. I think that the pressure is way too powerful.
But assuming, and I'm sure you're right, that this survey does produce the kind of picture in detail that you've just outlined, what would be the policy implications? Would it be larger reservations for...
That would depend on what comes out of these studies, right? But if you ask me personally, I think seriously increasing the amount of money the government of India spends on education, seriously increasing the amount of money the government of India spends on healthcare, providing a basic minimum to our people. Look, I'll tell you something, that just blew my mind. There's the NEET exam in India. Have you heard of the NEET exam? Okay. So I started studying the thing, and I got some people to start looking into it in detail, right? And it's mind-blowing what's going on, right? Do you know the pass mark of the NEET? 22%. Okay? So now this is how it works. If you get 95, 97%, you can go into any medical college you want. Okay? If you don't get 95, if you're not right up there and you get 95, 90, 85, 80, and you don't have money, you're not getting into medical college. And if you get 20% to 40% to 50%, and you got money going straight in. That's not an education system I want. That's not an education system I think India should have. Right? So I don't think there should be an education system that is determined simply by whether you can pay 2 crores, 3 crores, 4 crores to get in. I think that's destructive to India.
Now,
It's the same with the healthcare system.
I mean, one of the great, for friends of India and Indians in India and overseas Indians, one of the great worries about India in the last few years has been the health of Indian secularism, the survivability of India's secularism, and the belief, I think, that your family and the independence movement in general embodied, that India is strong because it's plural and diverse, has now been, at least partially, to some extent, greatly supplanted by the idea of a much more uniform Hindu majoritarian India. Now, you've talked recently about the store of love, and I think as a sort of rhetorical counterpoint to the implication that the BJP represents a store of hate. My question to you is, are you updating your idea of what secularism is to suit the times we're in, the challenge that you're facing? Because this is a very different challenge.
By the way, it's not a rhetorical idea.
Okay.
It's a practical idea. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything rhetorical about it. I walked from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, right? And halfway through that walk, I started asking myself a question. And I was in politics from 2004. And I started asking myself, why have I never used the word love as a politician? And nobody uses it, right? We use anger, we use hatred. Every day you can read it. Nobody uses love. And then I was like, well, let me try. It works. It works much better than hatred. And it works practically, right? So, and I can't stress to you how effective and how powerful it is. So it's not a rhetorical thing. Love and affection are values that everybody accepts. Everybody feels. You feel it for your family, you feel it for your country, you feel it for your friends. So why is it not in the political lexicon? Right? So I think it's not a question of redefining secularism. I think that there is a stream of politics in India represented by Mahatma Gandhi that starts with this question. And that was what his life was about. That we are not going to accept violence, hatred, anger as values. I used to, you're saying rhetorical. I was in politics from 2004 to when the yatra started. Nobody. If I used to meet them, they used to say, hello, Mr. Gandhi, how are you? Very nice to meet you. Lovely to meet you. Nobody ever said, I love you. Mm-hmm. Now, no, I'm serious. Now I walk out, I'm serious. I walk out to a restaurant and half the restaurant saying, we love you. No. I mean, I don't understand why is it it's sort of some complex, right? That politicians have, that somehow they're not allowed to show affection for people, or they're not allowed to be affectionate, they're not allowed to be loving. And I discovered that, I did it in my yatra, and it's changed my way of looking at my work completely. So I think it's a very powerful thing.
So let me think of questions while I am asking a final one, because I'm going to give you about 20 minutes worth of questions. I'm sure there are a lot of them.
I want to just touch one thing that you said, the idea of secularism.
Yeah.
See, India at its heart, right, is a union of languages, traditions, histories, religions, everything, right? And that's just the design of India. When you have lunch here, you get first course, salad, first course, second course. We don't get any of that. We get a thali with everything placed inside it. Right? And nobody is sitting there saying, okay, what's the first course? What's the second course? No, they're like, it's a jumble. And all the food has the same value. Right? Nobody says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the dal. I'm going to separate it from the rice. And, I'm only going to eat the rice. I'm not going to eat the dal. Right? So this idea of mixing and merging, this is India. And in India, this is a very deep philosophical idea. When Indian people go to a temple, or when Sikh people or people from any religion in India go to their religious places, what they're doing is merging with the deity. Right? They're doing this. And that is the nature of India. You can't remove it. And the misunderstanding that the BJP and the RSS have is that they think that India is a whole bunch of separate things. It's not. So we don't need to redefine anything. It's already there.
I can't help, and this will be my last question, I can't help branding this the Rahul Gandhi Love Actually campaign.
You're not the way we want.
This has got to. But put
it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, I'm feeling
you go
that.
in politics, you go and then you shout at that guy, and then that guy shouts back at you, then you abuse him, then he abuses you back. It's boring stuff. It's tiring,
So, between now and...
Like, you'll be surprised. Mm-hmm. I mean, you will be surprised, but I don't actually hate Mr. Modi. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't. Like, I get up in the morning and, okay, he's got a point of view, fine. I don't agree with his point of view, but I don't hate him. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in many moments, I empathize with him. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's not that I think that he's my enemy and now I hate him and he's got to be, no. He's got a different point of view, I got a different point of view. I have empathy and compassion for what he's doing. And I think that's a much better place to be. Mm-hmm. Instead of this thing that, him versus me. I don't think that's productive.
Just very briefly explain, and I know it's hard to do it briefly, and I accept your point that love actually thing isn't just rhetorical. I stand corrected. What's the practical route between here and your victory in 2029, 28, 29?
I mean, giving India and it's not just me, it's millions of people, young people, giving India a vision that gives them hope. That's it. And putting in front of the people of India a set of ideas that makes them believe in the future. Today, India, and I, not to be arrogant, but I have spent more time than most walking my country. India is struggling to imagine the future. When you struggle to imagine a future, you start discussing the past, right? So what is Hindutva's or Mr. Modi's or RSS's proposal? The proposal is, let's not discuss the future. Let's talk about the past. And that's very dangerous for a country like India, the scale of India, and it's also boring.
It's boring. Okay, I don't know whether there are mics. Okay, first of all, the young lady, and then I'll go up there. There's a young lady here. Do we have microphones, or are people... Oh, sorry, you have to... all right, don't stay in place, you have to queue up. So I didn't realize the system.
Oh my God.
But yeah.
You have to queue up for
Okay,
this.
yeah. So we need them to be efficient questions. So, oh my goodness, this is a movement. because of the volume of questions, please keep them as short and direct as you can. Yes, please.
I wanted to ask you to elaborate on your definition of secularism. Is it the absence of religion in the state, or the civil equality of religion within the state? And I specifically wanted you to apply this definition to the Uniform Civil Code, because that is a very important topic in India today. And how would, if Congress did achieve a majority in the parliament, how would Congress go about reforming and creating their own Uniform Civil Code if they do want one?
Look,
Thank you.
The basic idea is respecting people's perspectives, okay? And believing that all Indian citizens have a unique and different perspective, and they should have a space to have that perspective. And that includes religion, it includes language, it includes the clothes you wear, it includes the food you eat, it includes everything, right? BJP is proposing a uniform civil code. We haven't seen it. We have no idea what they're talking about. So for us to comment on it doesn't make sense. When they pull it out, then we'll have a look and we'll comment on it.
But when you talk about, may I ask a follow-up?
But I think not.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I mean, because I'm sure there'll be variations.
You can ask me the follow-up afterwards.
There we are. We're probably going to be even-handed, so yes.
Hello. Mr. Gandhi, you lead the INDI alliance, which is seen by many as an alternative to the BJP-led NDA government. Looking at the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, your party was not able to agree on seat-sharing policies with your alliance partner, which was Mamata Banerjee's TMC. You also have alliance partners like the Hindutva-based Shiv Sena UBT. My question is, if elected, how will you effectively run a government with such a divided coalition that cannot seem to agree on anything except for the removal of Prime Minister Modi?
No, actually we agree on a lot. We agree that the Constitution of India should be defended. Most of us agree on the idea of the caste census. We agree that two business people, namely Mr. Adani and Mr. Ambani, shouldn't run every single business in India. So for you to say that we don't agree, I think is inaccurate. Second thing is that all coalitions are negotiations, right? So a certain amount of to and fro will always take place. That is perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with it. And we have run governments again and again which have been successful using coalitions. So we're pretty confident that we can do it again.
Thank you.
And actually, I think if we get it right, we would, sorry, it's not India Alliance. That's a BJP framing. It's India Alliance.
What's the last word stand for? What does the A stand
Alliance.
for at the end? So wouldn't it be redundant to say India Alliance?
No, it's not. It's not. Because the whole idea of the alliance was to put across to the people of India that India is being attacked. And it was very successful. And generally the BJP people say India Alliance, but everyone else in India says India Alliance.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, Mr. Gandhi. Welcome to the Hilltop over here. My name is Nikash Harpanhalli. I am from Dallas, Texas, and I'm gay and Indian American. Last October, the Indian Supreme Court refused to legalize same-sex marriage. So my question for you, as well as Congress, as well as the India Alliance, is what is the future for Congress's policy towards gender and sexual minorities on the subject of love? what might that future look like in the next 4 years as BJP government continues? And on that same subject, what is the role of Congress and other interlocutors in promoting a freer, fair, and more loving India?
No, I think I can't really comment on a Supreme Court judgment. But what I said earlier, from our perspective, what you want to do, how you want to live your life, what religion you want to follow, what you want to wear, what your sexual preferences are, is your business. It's not our business. And for us, we would defend your right and everybody else's rights to express themselves and to live in a way they think fair. As long as you're not disturbing other people, being violent, being aggressive, we tend to accept it.
Thank you. Welcome to Georgetown.
Thank you.
Just before I'm taking the next question, given the weight of questions, am I allowed to extend this to 5:10? Because we started at 4:10. Is that all right with you? So I know I'm looking beyond you, but I should ask you first. And the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Yes, sir.
Who should be the face of the whole party? Do you think you're the best leader to be able to take on Modi, or is there someone better?
I mean, our position in our alliance is that we are not going to answer that question until we won the election. And there are multiple people, very talented people in the India alliance. So we're not, because the moment we start that discussion, right, it opens the space for the press and the BJP to create issues. So our decision is that we're not going to raise that question. We're going to fight the election, and then after the election we decide.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please.
Hi, Mr. Gandhi. I'm Nikita. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at Georgetown, and I'm originally from Bengaluru in India. My question was more so, and you touched on this with the Congress bank accounts being frozen this election, but in December of 2023, when BJP still had the supermajority, there was the highest number of opposition MPs being suspended from parliament. So obviously it's a very different electoral distribution right now. So my question is more so like, how has your ability to exercise your right to free speech changed? What have you observed? And how is the opposition able to better fulfill its constitutional duties?
Look, there are two different issues, okay? One issue is fighting and winning elections. And we're confident that we will fight and win elections against the BJP. And I think you'll see it in the next 2 or 3 months that we will win those elections, okay? That's very different than undoing the damage the RSS and the BJP have done to our institutions. And that is a much deeper problem, and that's not going to get solved so easily and so simply. But we have to have a strategy for it. I still have 20 plus cases on me. I still have, in India, the law, right, is that you can only do a defamation case if you're the person who's being defamed. I have 20 of those filed by people who I haven't defamed, right? So there's a huge set of structures that are being used to attack the opposition, investigative agencies, legal system, and that continues. That hasn't stopped. So, but the real challenge in front of India is how do you make our institutions neutral again? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm right in thinking that lots of people who called Modi objected to what you said about Mr. Modi, right? There are different libel actions from people called Modi, or is that a misreporting?
No. I mean, it's a legal case, so I'm not going to go into the details of it. But yeah, I won't go into the details of it because it'll get me into trouble.
Fair enough.
Hello, Mr. Gandhi. My name is Himank. I'm a recent MBA student from UC Berkeley. I came here to see you and meet you. One, really admire your courageous attempt at bringing vulnerability into politics using words like love. That's indeed very rare. I also did a small census in my class of all the Indians who were in my classroom. Around 7 in 10 said that they would want to return back to India in a few years. This is very different from how the situation was around 10 years ago or 15 years ago in the United States. There seem to be like two factors which are sort of leading to this. One is just the state of American dream right now, and also the improving economic opportunities in India. Around 1 million students have migrated to India, to US from India since the past 5 years. I just want to know, one, what is your comment on this phenomena? And second is, what is your message to students who are not able to avail the economic opportunities because of which they came to United States?
Look, and I've said this a couple of times, if you looked at global production in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you would find that it was carried out by the United States and by the West. Okay? If you wanted to buy a car in the 60s, you'd want to buy an American car. If you wanted to buy a refrigerator, you wanted to buy an American refrigerator. And the West and India handed that over to the Chinese, right? So the reality is that the cell phones you're using, the shirts you're wearing, the shoes you're wearing, most of them are not made in the United States, they're not made in Europe, they're not made in India, they're made in China, right? So there are two activities that countries can do. One is the organizing production. The second is organizing consumption. China organizes production. The West, India, America organizes consumption. China also organizes consumption. So Uber is organizing consumption. Ola in India is organizing consumption. Foxconn is organizing production. Elon Musk organizes production. The components of his car, of course, come from China. The batteries come from China. The motors come from China. And the problem is that a large country like India simply cannot get away with not organizing production. It just won't work because you will not create the amount of jobs that you need. That's what's happening. So if you look at India, you'll find that there is an IT industry. 1% of the population, 2% of the population, 3% of the population. But if you're a young person who wants a blue-collar job, it's not available. And the only way that job is going to get available is if you start producing, right? And India has just stopped producing. You look at our top businesses, Adani, Ambani, the big guys, they don't produce anything, right? So that's the real question. Now, there's a whole set of structures that don't allow production. Our GST is anti-production. Our GST is entirely designed to incentivize consumption, right? So you have to change completely the architecture of what you're doing. Our district, we call our district, we call them district collectors, right? They should be district producers, right? We need to think about getting into the act of production, and we're not doing that. And there's a reason, because the large monopolists don't want India to produce. It's much more convenient just to sell Chinese product, right? You get a rent on it, you sell it in India, you don't have to go through the rigors of production, you don't have to deal with the labor problems, you don't have to deal with the conflicts that production requires you to deal with, and you make huge amounts of money. But it's not sustainable. And you can see social tension rising. You can see unemployment numbers rising. So that's really what India has to think about. You have, every district in India has something unique they produce. Moradabad, brass capital. Mirzapur, carpets. Bellari, jeans. Surat, diamonds. Right? Now, the Indian government has forgiven 16 lakh crores in bank loans to 25 business people. How many of those people were actually producers? How many small businesses were forgiven their loans? How many medium-sized businesses were forgiven their loans? Not a single one. Even farmers, who are basically producers, their loans have not been forgiven. So my question is, why should 20 people, 25 people, get a free gift of 16 lakh crores? For what? What have they done? And if you're giving them that gift, give it to other people as well. Right? So these are the type of questions that India will have to deal with. Now, to say that India can't produce is wrong. Because I can tell you examples where India is producing. I can tell you that Tamil Nadu does quite a good job at production. I can tell you that Pune does quite a good job at production. I can tell you parts of Karnataka are pretty good at production. But the entire system is designed so that they can't succeed. Try. Go and talk to some of the guys. Go and talk to some of the guys who are trying to build automobiles and scooters in India and see what they say. The entire system is rigged against them. So that's what you have to think about.
Thank you.
We've only got a few minutes left, so if the last 2 or 3 questioners could be efficient, please.
Absolutely. Namaste, Rahul Gandhi ji. My name is Apurva Ramakrishnan, and well, because in your talk you did mention caste and reservation, I'm going to throw you a hardball question. In that, I would specifically like to know your thoughts and your party's thoughts on at what point, if at all, would we move away, or would you move away from the idea of caste-based reservations being a permanent solution to the underlying grassroots issues that necessitate such reservation-based systems? At what point would we as a society, but more importantly, you and your party, look at caste as caste-based reservations as a treatment of these symptoms and not the actual problem?
Why do you say caste-based reservations are treatment of the symptoms?
Because I believe that the reservations, when they came about historically as well, were there to provide equal access to opportunity. And the issue is, even today, the access to opportunity is where the lack is there. And do you think there are better ways to strengthen our systems institutionally at the grassroots levels than the caste-based reservation?
Well, let's look at the numbers. If you look at the Indian government, and you look at, there are 70 bureaucrats who run the Indian government, secretaries to the government of India. These are the guys that take pretty much all the financial decisions in the government. Okay? If you add up Dalits, tribals, OBCs, they come to 73%. Out of 70 people, there's one tribal. I think 3 Dalits, 3 OBCs. So, and I think a minority. So, 90% of India, in the government of India, has access to less than 10% of the positions that determine how money is going to be spent. And when you actually look at the financial numbers, then tribals get 10 paisa out of 100 rupees. Dalits get, I think, 5 rupees out of 100 rupees. And OBCs get a similar number. So the fact of the matter is that they're not getting participation. Right? And the problem is that 90% of India is not able to play, right? Go through the list of every single business leader in India. And I've done it. Show me the tribal name. Show me the Dalit name. Show me the OBC name. Out of the top 200, I think there's one OBC. They're 50% of India. So we're not treating the symptom. That's the problem. Right? Now, it's not the only tool. There are other tools. But we will think of scrapping reservations when India is a fair place. And India is not a fair place. Now, that creates a problem. Because there are many people who come from the upper castes, right, who say, look, what have we done wrong? Right? Why are we being punished? And so then you think about increasing dramatically the supply of some of these things. You think about decentralizing power. You think about involving many more people in the governance of our country. Right? You think of opening up, I mean, frankly, with all due respect, I don't think any of you are ever going to become Adani or Ambani. And there's a reason for that. You can't. Because those doors are closed. So the answer to people in the general caste is you open those doors.
I think we have time for one final question, so make it count.
Hello, Mr. Gandhi. My name is Risa. I'm a third-year student at Georgetown, and I'm originally from Mumbai. My question to you is based on your comment that our institutions have been captured. I wanted to ask, what are the actual policy reforms that the INC sees in order to uncapture our institutions? You said that our education system is extremely unfair and only really prioritizes the success of the rich. So how can we change these systems to make them more meritocratic and make them service the general population of India?
I mean, the institutional capture is something that's new. And frankly, we're going to have to navigate that when we come to that point, because we've never dealt with that. We've never dealt with a situation where, the RSS has filled an entire institution with its people. And so we have some thoughts about it, but we'd have to do it as and when it happens. In terms of the education system, it's just dramatically increasing access, dramatically increasing the size of the education system, putting much more money into it. The best Indian education institutions are still government institutions. IIT is not a private institution, right? IIM is not a private institution. People forget that. There's no private institution that matches the IITs. Everybody accepts that. So putting effort into designing new institutions, scaling up old institutions, and decentralizing some of these things, I think would help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with apologies to the other questioners, I'm gonna have to end it now. But I just want to thank Mr. Gandhi. That was one of the most unusual interviews I've done. Love being cited more often than I normally expect, and it was very, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you
so much for sparing the time. Thank you. Thank you. That was great.
Sam Petroda ji, Arti Krishna ji, Mohinder Singh ji, George Abraham ji, Pradeep Samala ji, Johnson ji, senior IOC leaders on the dais,
brothers and sisters, friends, I'd like to welcome all of you here this evening. Thank you very much for coming to listen to us and to share the evening with us. It's always nice to hear Sam Petroda with his experience. He was saying that his words get twisted. But now वो सबके साथ होता है. इंडिया में नॉन स्टॉप होता है. मीडिया का यही काम बचा है. या वो चल रहा है. But I don't know if you've noticed that something has definitely changed after the election results. You know? People come sometimes while I'm in Delhi, people will, I'm driving in the car, sometimes they'll make me open the window and they'll say, डर निकल गया, डर नहीं लगता अब डर नहीं लगता, डर गायब हो गया. तो it's interesting to me that बीजेपी ने कितना, मोदी जी ने कितना डर फैलाया. एजेंसीज का दबाव, मीडिया का दबाव, इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट, छोटे बिजनेसेस पे, मीडियम साइज बिजनेसेस पे, और एक सेकंड में सब गायब हो गया. अजीब सी बात है. मतलब सालों लगे उस डर को पैदा करने में, सालों लगे, प्लानिंग चली, पैसा लगा, और एक सेकंड में खत्म. और वो दिखता है अब. You can see it. I see it. I get to see it in Parliament. I see the Prime Minister right up front. And I can tell you that the idea of Mr. Modi, 56-inch chest, direct connection with God, that's all gone. It's history now. And he realizes it, India realizes it, his partners in government realize it, the 3 or 4 senior ministers in his government realize it. But it's interesting, some months ago, I don't know, many of you must run businesses. You run businesses. And I can see ladies here who run households. And you can imagine if suddenly one day your finance department comes to you and says, listen, all your bank accounts are sealed. You can imagine, what happens if you're running a business or you're running a household and somebody comes and tells you, listen, all your bank accounts are closed till further notice. You won't know what to do. This is what happened to the Congress party. 3 months before the election, our bank accounts were all sealed. Every single bank account of the Congress party was sealed. No money for advertising, no money for campaign, no money to transport our leaders. And I remember Kharge ji, myself, 1 or 2 other senior people, and the treasurer. So, मतलब treasurer की तो हवा निकल गई थी कि भाई मतलब क्या करूं मैं, बैंक अकाउंट सील हो गए. तो we were discussing it now. What do? We have an election. So much so many things to do, campaign, etc., etc. Bank account band ho gaye. First time, I've myself fought multiple elections, 2004, 2009, assembly. First time in my life, new thing. All the bank accounts are sealed. So he just looked and said, we have no money. And then I looked at him, I said, देखी जाएगी. देखते हैं क्या होता है. And that was the spirit we fought the election with. And we could see. See, first of all, you have to understand what the fight is about. Fight is not about politics. That is superficial. What is your name? Brother, yeah, with the turban? What is your name? Balinder Singh. The fight is about whether he, as a Sikh, is going to be allowed to wear his turban in India. Or he, as a Sikh, is going to be allowed to wear a kada in India. Or he, as a Sikh, is going to be able to go to a Gurdwara. That's what the fight is about. And not just for him. For all religions. Fight is also about, I can see here in the crowd, people from Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Haryana. I can see all these people. Telangana, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. Right? So now, see, when I say Kerala, now, see, I've been a member of parliament for Kerala. So when I say Kerala, first Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh now. So first when you don't understand these things, you say Kerala is just a simple word. Or you say Punjab, a simple word. But these are not simple words. This is your history, your language, your tradition. Your entire imagination is in these words. And what the RSS is basically saying is that certain states are inferior to other states, certain languages are inferior to other languages, certain religions are inferior to other religions, certain communities are inferior to other communities. This is what the fight is about. We are of the opinion that whether you are from Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, all of you have your history, all of you have your tradition, all of you have your language, and every single one of them is as important as any other one. So how can you, the people from Tamil Nadu who are sitting here, what would you do if somebody told you cannot speak Tamil? How would you feel? How would you react? That is the ideology of the RSS. That Tamil, Marathi, Bengali, Manipuri, these are all inferior languages. That's what the fight is about. It ends up in the polling booth. It ends up in Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha. But the fight is about what type of India we are going to have. Are we going to have an India where people are allowed to believe what they want to believe? People are allowed to respect what they want to respect, say what they want to say, listen to what they want to hear? Or are we going to have an India where only few limited people can decide what is going to happen? And the problem is these people don't understand India. वो समझ ही नहीं आती उनको. ये है क्या? इसकी हिस्ट्री क्या है? उनको मालूम ही नहीं है. It's like you imagine, जैसे यहाँ पे अब आप डिनर खाएंगे, यहाँ पे आपको 3 कोर्स 4 कोर्स मील मिलता है ना. पहले शुरू फर्स्ट कोर्स होता है, फिर मेन कोर्स आता है, फिर डिजर्ट आती है. होता है ना. इंडिया में कोई फर्स्ट कोर्स, सेकंड कोर्स, थर्ड कोर्स होता है? एक थाली मिलती है, सब कुछ उसके अंदर होता है. सही बात है ना? अब थाली में सब कुछ मिल जाता है, सब्जी, दाल, चावल सब मिल जाता है, मिलता नहीं मिलता है? वो स्वीट डिश भी उसी थाली में मिलता है, नहीं मिलता ना? तो इंडिया का नेचर ये है, सब कुछ एक साथ चलता है। अब अगर कोई आदमी थाली के सामने बैठ जाए और कहे भैया चावल दाल से ज्यादा जरूरी है और सब्जी की रैंकिंग सबसे नीचे है, तो क्या होगा? यही बीजेपी के लोग करते हैं। मतलब उनको समझ नहीं आती कि ये देश सबका है, ये देश मिलकर बना है। इसको इंडिया इज कॉल्ड यूनियन ऑफ स्टेट्स। इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज रिटन क्लियरली, India that is Bharat is a union of states. What does it mean? It means it's a union of languages, it's a union of traditions, union of histories, union of music, of dance. वो कहते नहीं, यूनियन नहीं है, ये सब अलग अलग हैं और इन सब में से एक सबसे जरूरी है, एक सोच सबसे जरूरी है, उसका हेडक्वार्टर नागपुर में है, बाकी सबका कुछ लेना देना नहीं है। So that is what the fight is about, and you are ambassadors. I said yesterday in my speech, you have come from one union of states and you've come to another union of states. United States is also called the United States because it's a union of states. And you are our ambassadors. You're the bridge between these two great unions of states. And you make us very proud because we understand what it meant for you to come here. We understand the difficulties, the struggles that you have had to deal with. It's not easy. But when you came here, you came with humility, you came with respect, and you came with affection. You didn't come here and say, oh, you know, we're going to the United States and the United States is inferior to us. You didn't say, no, we're going to the United States, but we hate the United States. You became part of the United States. I'm sure you're proud of India, and you're proud of the fact that you live in America. अब बीजेपी के सिस्टम में आपकी दो आइडेंटिटीज हो ही नहीं सकती. You cannot be Indian and at the same time be American. That is what the fight is about. And that is what we are trying to do in India. We are saying, look, don't spread hatred, spread love. Don't be arrogant, be humble. Don't disrespect people. Respect people, respect traditions, respect religions, respect languages, respect communities, that's all. And I'm sure that you understand deeply what I'm trying to say. I'm sure that you do it in your lives every day. In fact, frankly, if you didn't, you wouldn't be successful. And you're all very successful. So that is what I wanted to say. I really appreciate that you came here. You will take American ideas, American values back home, and you will bring Indian values, Indian traditions, Indian ideas to the United States. That is your role. And you will help both countries, both unions, while doing this. So it's a win-win for you, us, the United States, and India. Thank you very much.
A few of my students came to me and they asked one simple question. It's like, what does his day-to-day as the leader of opposition look like? So can you tell them what exactly do you do in that role?
Yeah, first, thank you very much for coming here. It's an honor for me to come, and lovely to see so many people from back home, so many students. See, opposition, at its heart, is the voice of people. So, if you have parliament, of course, there's a whole sequence of events that go on, but what you're generally thinking about is where and how can I raise issues of the people of India? And you're thinking from an individual perspective, and you're also thinking from a group perspective, you're thinking from an industry perspective, you're thinking from a farmer perspective, and the important thing is that you do it sensitively and after listening and understanding carefully. So very often, you see an issue in the beginning. When you're new to politics, you see an issue and you're like, oh, that's what the issue is. But when you go into a little bit of detail, you realize that there is nuance and complexity. So understanding that nuance and then planning your day according to that, that's how it generally works. Parliament, of course, you go there in the morning, and then it's like a war. You go in, and then you fight. It's a pleasant war. It's reasonably fun at times. It can get nasty also, but it's a war of ideas, war of words, and we are trying to put our point of view across, and the government is trying to suppress our point of view. So that's how that works. And then there are a lot of people who come and see you, different types of people, party people, business people, farmers, these type of delegations. So you're constantly listening to what they're saying.
So you just mentioned that you look at issues in a certain way differently. Now, thinking about your career as a politician, the first time you got elected and this time, has there been a change in the way you look at these issues and your mind thinks differently about how to go about them?
Quite differently. Now, I'm coming to the conclusion that listening is much more important than speaking, right? And listening doesn't just mean that I come there and I listen to you. That's not listening. That somebody you're talking to me and I'm looking at you and I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm not listening. Listening is a completely different thing. Listening is putting myself in your position. So if you're a farmer, going into the person's life, going into the person's day-to-day life, and then understanding what he's trying to tell you. So listening is fundamental. And then understanding the deeper dynamics. So you then are not just swimming around on the surface, you're raising fundamental issues, and you don't go raising every single issue. You focus clearly and you're like, okay, this is important, I got to raise this. This is something important, I got to fight for this. This is something important, I got to fight. So you choose your battles much more carefully.
I think you hit it on the head, that prioritization.
So, very good definition of political strategy or business strategy. Understand clearly what you don't want to do. So don't sit there doing 50, 100 different things. Understand clearly, जो नहीं करना है, उसको पहले समझो, पहले कर दो. And then उसमें से 3-4 चीजें निकलेंगी, and then that's what you got to focus on.
Well, I think back to the students, that's what we talk about. So this time you're hearing from Mr. Gandhi himself about prioritization. Now, a few things that you mentioned just takes me back a few months. A very unprecedented event happened in terms of the yatra. Personally, for me, a 30-minute walk on the treadmill, you can see 4,000 kilometers and connecting with people in a very different way. How has that changed your perception about people, and how has it helped you connect with people differently?
See, the first question to ask is, why were we walking 4,000 kilometers? Right? You know, it's what created the need for us to do this? And the reason is that all avenues of communication in India were shut. Every single avenue, no matter what we did, it was all shut. We spoke in Parliament, that's not televised. We go to the media, they don't pick up what we say. We even go with documents to the legal system, nothing happens. So, all our avenues were shut. And for a long time, we literally couldn't understand how to communicate. And then suddenly we hit upon the idea कि भाई अगर मीडिया आपको लोगों के पास नहीं ले जा रहा, इंस्टीट्यूशनल सिस्टम आपको लोगों के पास नहीं ले जा रहा, तो फिर डायरेक्टली चले जाओ. And then what better way to go directly than to literally go walking across the country? And so that's what we did. And I must tell you, I had in the beginning itself, I had a little bit of a knee problem. So 3-4 days into it, I was like, "Ye kya kar diya?" I was like, you know, because you get up in the morning, I go running, and so you get up in the morning and you say, "Okay, I'm going to go run 10 kilometers," and they're like, "ठीक है," and then you get up in the morning and you say, "I've got to walk 4,000." It's a completely different paradigm, you know. So there was moments of that, okay, this is quite a big thing. But it went surprisingly easy. It was not difficult at all. And it fundamentally changed the way I think about my work. I would say that it completely changed how I view politics, how I view our people, how I communicate with our people, how I listen to people, and not just me. There were many people involved in the yatra, and all of us. And to me, the most powerful thing that happened organically, on its own, we didn't actually do it, it just happened, was that we introduced, certainly for the first time in India, possibly for the first time in many, many countries, the idea of love in politics. And this seems strange, you know, it's a strange thing, because you look at the political discourse in most countries, and you will never find the word love in that discourse. It just doesn't exist anywhere. You'll find hatred, you'll find anger, you'll find unfairness, you'll find corruption, you'll find all these words. But you will never find the word love in the language. And the Bharat Jodo Yatra actually introduced that idea into the Indian political system. And it has amazed me how that idea has worked.
So now when you reflect on the yatra, you think about some of the key moments that happened. Is there any like an aha moment that you want to share with us that you never expected it to happen, but it happened in a positive way?
I'll tell you what I realized. And many of you people who are in business school and other public facing spaces, I realized that actually when I was in the yatra was speaking on its own. So I realized that I was there, but pretty much everything that was coming out of my mouth was actually coming from the yatra, not for me. Right? So there was thousands of people, they were telling me things, it was going, I was listening to them, they were telling me things, and then their words were coming out of my mouth. So I was not communicating as Rahul. I was communicating as the yatra was communicating. And it took me a little while to figure this out, because first I was like, oh, I'm giving a speech. And I have this idea. And I'm going to say this. But then suddenly it started to occur to me that every single thing coming out of my mouth is actually things people have said to me. And the most beautiful example of this was this slogan that came, which is "Nafrat ke bazaar mein mohabbat ki dukaan khol rahe ho," right? Now you're clapping, but the slogan did not come, it was not my slogan, right? It was not even a slogan of the organizers. It was a guy who came, I saw him, and he was walking with us, and there was a rope which used to surround us, and he was trying to come in, and he couldn't come in. The police would beat him. So I saw him once there, then I saw him somewhere else. And then I told Alankar, who's standing there, I said, "Dekho, usko le aao." So anyway, Alankar went looking for him, he had disappeared. Then after some time he came out, he charged through the police, and then he pointed at me like that. And he said, "मैं जानता हूँ आप क्या कर रहे हो, मैं जानता हूँ आप क्या कर रहे हो." So I said, "क्या कर रहा हूँ?" He said, "आप नफरत के बाजार में मोहब्बत की दुकान खोल रहे हो." Right? So then I realized that this is not me. This is the sentiment of the crowd that is speaking. And so that would happen again and again. It would happen sometime. Once it happened when a woman came up to me, held my hand, is walking, and I could feel that something was wrong with the way she was holding my hand. So I said, "Kya hua?" She said, "वो मुझे मार रहा है." I said, "कौन मार रहा है?" He said, "मेरा पति मार रहा है." So I said, "मतलब?" She said, "नहीं, वो अभी मुझे मार रहा था, मैं भाग के आई हूँ." So I said, "तो क्या करूँ?" So I said, "पुलिस वालों को बताएं?" She said, नहीं, पुलिस वालों को मत बताओ." I said, "क्यों?" She said, "और मारेगा." Now, that's a sentiment of thousands and thousands. I realize that's a sentiment of thousands and thousands of women. That they're being mistreated, they're being treated violently, but they can't say anything. It's hidden. Right? So now when I'm speaking to you right now, I'm saying these things to you, it's not me. It's that girl who's saying it to you. I just transmitted it. So that's the job, in my view, of a politician, is to listen to sentiment, to understand sentiment deeply, and then to give it to other people, right? Like I can see the faces here of the women versus the men, and when I'm saying that, I can see the faces of the women are different. They're reacting completely differently to what I said because they're understanding that. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've been through that before," right? So that's the idea. The idea is not that Rahul Gandhi has some fantastic vision for the country and now he's going to project the vision to the country. The idea is, what is the country saying? What is the country feeling? Right? So in our system, I always used to wonder why this idea of sort of annihilation of the person. You know, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, you see him in a sense destroying himself. You know, when he's in university, if you see his pictures, they're very nice suit, very nice hair combed, and then slowly you start to see that those things start to fall away. His clothes fall away, his fancy suits fall away, everything falls away. So there's a sort of almost a destruction of the person taking place. And you can see this in many of our leaders. And the reason it's happening is because the person is actually dying and the voice of other people is taking over. Right? I don't know, I'll give you an example. Do you know what devta means in the term devta? Do you know what it means? Yes. No. No, it doesn't mean God. The deity. No, it doesn't mean the deity. So devta in India actually means a person whose internal feelings are exactly the same as his external expression. Meaning he's a completely transparent being. Right? It does not mean God. So if this person tells me every single thing that he believes or he thinks, and he tells it to me, that's the definition of devta. Right? It's the idea that you destroy yourself. Right? So to me, that is interesting about our politics. How do you suppress your own ideas? Right? How do you suppress your own fear, or how do you suppress your own greed, or how do you suppress your own ambition and absorb other people's fear, other people's ambition?
I think before we go to the next question, this needs a big, big round of applause. So we just
If you look at our big leaders, and historically, and you can see extreme, so you can see a Buddha who's extreme, you can see Bhagwan Ram, same thing. You can see Mahatma Gandhi. The basic idea is the destruction of the identity. The basic idea is the destruction. The basic idea is the destruction of the self, right? And listening to what others are saying. So to me, that's Indian politics. That's the heart of Indian politics, and that's what an Indian leader is. That's how an Indian leader is different than, say, an American leader. An American leader will say to you, listen, we got to go there. I'm going to take you there. Promised land, let's go. Indian leader attacks himself. Gandhi essentially attacked himself. Totally different concept. In some ways, Bharat Jodo Yatra was an attack on myself. 4,000 kilometer chalna hai, risk hai, goli lag sakti hai, chodo. Let's see what happens. So then that generates a completely different way of thinking and a completely different relationship with people. You know? Idea of Shiva, basically. When they say Shiva is the destroyer, what is he destroying? Himself. That's the idea. Right? He's destroying his ego, he's destroying his structure, he's destroying his beliefs. So Indian political thought, Indian political action is all going inwards. But I mean, I think we might be getting too philosophical. So a good scientist is also that.
I agree.
Or a good engineer is that. Good yogi is that. In fact, if you're good at pretty much anything, you are destroying yourself in some way.
I need a pause for that. One of the important threads in this fabric that we talk about is the youth, and they have a very strong role to play. And especially when you look at US and India, and I see all the students that come in, one of the greatest joys for us here is to work with our students. They just energize us beyond limits. More than 300,000 of them are in the US. About 4,000 of them from India are here at UTD. Where do you see them playing a role in the large scheme of things that India is poised towards. These ambassadors who are sitting here, and of course there are some who have come before and are doing great things here in the US.
In one way, there you are a bridge between the rest of the world and India. So you have ideas and values that you bring to the United States. And often those ideas and values might not be understood so easily in the United States, right? There's a different cultural ethos, different cultural system here. But your ideas are as valuable as anybody else's. In the same way, they also have a culture, an ethos here. Today I met some young guys just before I came here who came to the United States, not students, but people who, driving trucks and stuff like that. And they were saying to me, look, I said, what do you like about the United States? And they said that what we love about the United States is the idea of equality. That a truck driver in the United States gets respect. And as a truck driver in India, there's no way I could get respect, right? Equality is a very powerful idea. And it's an idea that can help India in huge ways. So if you take back the idea of equality, take back the idea of fairness, that's a very powerful thing. So I think you should see yourself as a bridge. And the other thing is, what I've noticed in my life is that individuals can do huge things. And often it's individuals who you don't expect are going to do big things that do it. So system will say to you, university might say to you, these are the best students. And you'll find that actually the guy who's going to make change is sitting somewhere else in the back. And the university has a way of, making that person feel uncomfortable and said, you're not doing well, your grades are not, you're not getting a 4.0. And then suddenly you find the guy who's not doing so well has done much better in life because he's into the habit of questioning things, asking himself, why is it like this and not like that? And sometimes institutions don't react well to that. If they see you always asking questions, they might say, yeah, disturb kar raha hai isko, chup karo, piche bhejo. So that idea of questioning, that idea of resistance, that idea of being a little disruptive, disturbing a little bit, this is a very powerful idea. I use it in my work also. The idea of creating a disturbance. The Bharat Jodo Yatra was a disturbance. Politics is going on like this, let's disturb it. We don't like the way it's going on, we want to do it like this. So I think that's powerful. If you understand the culture you're operating in, understand your culture, and then have this sense of, how can I do something to bridge it, how can I do something to disturb it, it's powerful.
Talking about the same youth, I think the life of anybody who's young and is in some, like the 20s, the life is like a soap opera. Every day there is a new challenge, there is something that is...
It's the life of somebody who's in his 50s, 60s, 70s. The soap opera continues. It's not that the soap opera stops at 30, let me tell you. In fact, in many ways, the soap opera becomes much more dramatic later. Multiple soap operas start up.
But so they have concerns. They have concerns about doing well in life. They're starting off maybe a professional career. They have questions about whether they'll do well or not. Employment also happens to be a key area and I feel across the world right now the youth is kind of rippling through that, a phase where there are questions about where they will land professionally from an employment perspective. So when we connect any sentence which has the word youth and employment in the same sentence, it's a cause of worry at a lot of places at a lot of different levels. What do you have to say about employment and our youth?
See, first of all, let's be clear. Not everywhere on the planet has an employment problem. Okay? The West has an employment problem. India has an employment problem. But there are many countries in the world that don't really have an employment problem. China certainly doesn't have an employment problem. Vietnam doesn't have an employment problem. So there are places on the planet that are not struggling with unemployment. There's a reason. If you look at the United States in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, they were the center of global production. Anything that was made, cars, washing machines, TVs, all made in the United States. Production moved from the United States. It went to Korea, it went to Japan, eventually it went to China. And if you look today, China is dominating global production. You go to India, you look at the phones, you look at the furniture, you look at clothes, you'll see on the back, made in China. That's a fact, right? So what has happened? The West, America, Europe, India, have given up on the idea of production. And they've handed it to China. The act of production creates jobs. What we do, what the Americans do, what the West does, is we organize consumption. Okay? Uber is organizing consumption. Okay? Foxconn is organizing production. Mahindra organizes production. Bajaj organizes production. These are the guys who create the jobs. And that is the problem. You're never going to employ India using IT, using consumption. It's not going to happen. So India has to think about the act of production and organizing production. And India has to, it's not acceptable that India simply says, okay, manufacturing, what you call manufacturing or production is going to be the preserve of the Chinese, it's going to be the preserve of the Vietnamese, it's going to be the preserve of the Bangladeshis, right? Bangladesh completely outcompetes us in textiles. Regardless of the problems they're facing right now, they wiped us off. They wiped us clean in textiles, right? So we have to reimagine how to produce in a democratic environment. Until we do that, we will face high levels of unemployment. And frankly, it's not sustainable. So you're going to see that if we carry on down this path of forgetting about manufacturing, you're going to see massive social problems coming in India and in the United States and in Europe, right? The polarization of our politics is because of this.
We're getting ready to ask a few questions from the audience. Can we have the runners with the mics? But while we do that, Rahulji, in this, what you just spoke about, that even if people are fine with the way their jobs are and they're secured, we have a new challenge in the name of AI. And there's a lot of fears around that AI is going to take jobs away. Do you feel so as well?
Again, see, every time you get a new technology, the argument is made that it's going to take jobs away, right? When computers first came, it's going to take jobs away. When calculators first came, it's going to take jobs away. ATMs came, it's going to take jobs away. Okay, this is a fact. Now, what happens is, it does take jobs away from some people and then transfers them to other people, right? So, I'm not of the view that jobs will vanish, but different type of jobs will be created and different types of systems will benefit more or less, right? I think, for example, the IT industry in India is going to have a real big, serious problem because of AI. But I don't really think a Bajaj making scooters is going to have such a big problem, right? So it's going to hit different people differently. It's going to take away some jobs. It's going to add some jobs. And if you're positioned properly, it's an opportunity. And if you're positioned badly, you're in trouble. I mean, I remember Mr. Vajpayee gave a speech that Indians don't need computers, right? And somebody else gave a speech that Indians don't need English. Computers created millions of jobs in India. It's a fact. So it depends. It depends how flexible you are and how well you're looking at the future.
Thank you so much. We do have some folks here who would like to ask a few questions. So can we get a mic here, please? Mr. Shroff, right here.
Okay. First, let me add 2 questions. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity.
Let's keep it to one question, please.
Yeah.
Yes, one question.
So India has a young population. So what are your plans to modernize the education system and bridge the gap between the education system and employability? That is the first question.
Let's keep it to
sure.
one, please. Thank you. Nimish.
Should I just answer this one, or you want to get to, okay?
I'll try.
I think many people say that India has a skills problem. I don't think India has a skills problem. I think India has a skill respect problem. So India doesn't respect people who have skills. But I don't think there's any limit on the skills that are already available in India. Okay? Second, our education system doesn't connect with the business system. So you have a business system that is operating on its own, and you have a sort of ivory tower education system. And the education system in no way connects deeply with the skill structure of India. So I think bridging that gap, linking those two systems of skill and the education system, vocational training, I think is fundamental. I think currently huge problem in the education system is the ideological capture. So, you know, feeding ideology through the education system. Most of our vice chancellors today are placed by the RSS. It's an organization that has a very particular perspective on life, on history, on the future. That's really damaging. Having one organization that is placing all its people in our education system, I think that's damaging. So ensuring that people who run our education system are independent, are not, you know, ideological, or are not committed to sort of a particular way of thinking, I think is important.
Thank you. Dr. Gupta.
Rahulji, I have a question. What's your vision of creating growth in the industry, manufacturing?
No, I don't see. Again, what I think is not as important as what the large mass of Indian people think, right? One problem that you simply cannot solve if you continue on the direction we're on is giving our blue-collar workers jobs. You simply, if you carry on this road, you simply cannot do that, right? The only way you're going to give our large mass of people jobs is if you start producing things, if you start manufacturing. And the foundation of manufacturing, you don't just start manufacturing cell phones, right? It is a sequence, right? So you have to go up the value chain if you want to manufacture. A lot of people say, oh no, you can manufacture cell phones directly. Well, cell phones are not being manufactured in India.
Cell phones are being assembled in India. It's a different thing. Meaning components are coming from China and those components are being assembled in India, right? The reason China can develop those components is because they have a huge infrastructure that has manufactured many different things, many different types of things before. So you cannot get away from that basic stuff. And I think you have to have a vision for production. For example, our GST is designed against production. It rewards consumption, it punishes production. States that produce are harmed, right? Large monopolies, huge monopolies, harm production, right? They influence the policy regime so that players cannot produce. So these are some of the things that you would have to look at if you want India to start producing. I'm convinced India can produce with no problem. I'm convinced that India can take on China if you start aligning the country for production and if you start respecting skills. I'm absolutely convinced of it. And states like Tamil Nadu have already shown it. Right? It's not that Indian states have not done it. Pune has shown it, Maharashtra has shown it, Tamil Nadu has shown it, Karnataka to an extent has shown it. Right? So it is being done. But it's not being done at the scale and with the coordination that it needs to be done. I'll give you an example. You take any district in India, you will find that there is a historical network that produces there. You go to Moradabad, you will find brass, right? You go to Mirzapur, you will find carpets. You go to Bellary, you will find jeans. So each district has a traditional network of production. Now, how much support are those people getting? You want to create a brass industry, create it in Moradabad. Open the banks to them, infuse technology, support them, and I guarantee you, they will take on China. Right? And you can do it in every district. You support the Bellary jeans industry, you put in a couple 100 crores into that thing, you open the doors of banks to them, I guarantee you they'll get to work, right? But currently, I mean a simple statistic, 16 lakh crore rupees of bank loans have been forgiven to 25 people. 25 people. Right? Do you realize how many industries you could set up with that? And they've just been forgiven. Right? When we forgive farm loans and we say, okay, we're going to forgive 70,000 crores for all India's farmers, the press suddenly jumps up and down. And 16 lakh crores have been forgiven without a word. And whose money is it? It's taxpayers' money. Where's it come from? It's come from your pockets. So why should 20 people get this massive free gift? Why should one person, suddenly have all the ports, all the airports, all the defense contracts? What is happening when you do that? You're taking away money from people. Instead of having one business that runs all the airports in the country and one business that runs all the ports, you could have 10, 15, 20, right? So it's all destruction of economic activity.
Thank you. We can take something on this side. Can we have the mic? Can we please have the mic here? Rakshit, go ahead.
Hello, Rahulji. My name is Rakshit. First of all, thank you so much for being here. We feel so privileged. So my question is, how do you think we as students and youth contribute to and get involved in public service and the development of our country?
Come and work with us. We can show you. But realize that neither is it easy, and it's not fun all the time. It can be unpleasant, it can be hard, but it's got its, you do get gratification from it, but it's not easy. And if any of you are interested in it, We run internships and we put people into our system and train people.
Thank you. We had a question here, Mr. Shah.
Rahulji, first of all, thank you for coming here and gracing UTD with your presence. I'm a faculty and I also represent a lot of students, so I'd like to ask, for everything we look at it and say there is always something you can even do better for something that you haven't done successfully. So looking back, Bharat Jodo Yatra was so successful. Couple of things what you could have done differently if you did it now.
No, look, every single thing that you do, I mean, I'm sure if we sit down and say, okay, Bharat Jodo Yatra, we could have done it better, right? There's nothing that you do that you couldn't have done better or you can't do better. And that's just how life works. And these are choices. So I don't think I've ever done anything perfect in my life. And I don't think I will ever do anything perfect in my life. But it's a learning experience, right? So you start off, you try something, doesn't work, you do it again, and then it works. Yeah.
Thank you. Take another question.
One thing that I didn't think was important, because of something my father said to me once, which is strange, which turns out is quite important, which is that once my father told me, look, if you work properly, you don't need to tell anybody about it. Work speaks for itself. But it's actually not true. It's a strange thing, it's not true. You've got to communicate it. And the one thing I have fundamentally changed is that earlier I would do something and I wouldn't communicate it. And now I do something and I communicate it. It's not actually my nature. My nature is actually just to do it and not communicate it. But I think it is important that you communicate.
It should be a two-way traffic.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, let's go there. Can we have the mic? My eyes feel like a lot of machine right now. I'm trying to pick up which one I see. Where is the mic? Jitesh? Go ahead.
The fight is about...
Thank you, Rahulji. So, as my friend Rakshit was saying, like public into service or public into politics, which one you prefer? Like one Indian youth should be more into service or like complete into politics?
Look, don't have a rigid idea of what political action is. And in the same way, don't have a rigid idea of what service is. Those two can overlap. right? Politics is much broader than fighting elections or giving speeches, right? Politics is about influencing how people think, and you can be very political and not be directly involved in the political system, right? Or you can be deeply involved in the political system and not be doing politics at all. So I don't think you should think that those are two different avenues. You should do what you like. And in what you like, you can do politics without a problem.
I think we have time for another couple of questions, right? So, Dr. Mehrotra, can we have the mic here, please? I'll get it. Okay.
First off, thanks a lot for being here. It's a rare opportunity and we're truly grateful. To me at least, and I could be wrong here, it almost seems like there are two Indias. One that is reaping the benefits of the growth that we see, and then one that's being kind of bypassed. There's still unacceptably high number of people living in abject poverty who don't even have access to the very basic of quality education. What vision do you have to ensure that this India that's kind of been cut off at least gets some benefits, and that it's a little more equitable, the benefits of India's economic growth?
There are clearly two Indias, and very small percentage of people benefit from India. The vast majority of people don't benefit from it. And if anybody talks about building a country, talks about progress, you simply cannot ignore this fact, right? If you look at our institutions, our businesses, our legal system, anywhere, you will find that it's captured by a very, very small percentage of people. Now, one of the things that I keep saying is that in the 21st century, you need data. And you need to understand the extent of this capture. I think when people actually understand the extent of this capture, they will be shocked, right? And so, for example, the idea of a caste census is a way of shining the light on this capture, right? It amazes me when people say, oh, there shouldn't be a caste census. It's like saying his leg is broken and there shouldn't be an X-ray. Why not, right? What's the problem? What's the problem with an X-ray? Second thing is the issue of skill, right? You've heard of the Eklavya story? You've heard of the Eklavya story? Yes. If you want to pin down what is happening in India, it is millions and millions of Eklavya stories every single day. The people with skill, their thumbs are being cut off. They're not being allowed to operate. They're not being allowed to thrive. And it's happening across the board. So, respect for skills, supporting skills financially through technology, that's how you'll unleash India's power. You're not going to unleash India's power by empowering 1%, 2% of India. And, you know, it's not interesting for me. So, I'm very passionate about this. I'll give you an example. Sometime back, when we were in government, we were talking about skill development. And the gentleman who was running, he was appointed by Manmohan Singh Ji for skill development. He came to see me. And we were having a conversation. And he was explaining to me how he was going to build ITIs. And he was going to put trainers inside ITIs. for plumbing, for hair cutting, for carpentry, for stuff like that. And I was listening to him. And I asked him a question. And what I said was, look, you're building these ITIs. And I gave him an example. I said, let's say you want to train 1 million barbers. Now in your model, what you're going to do is you're going to have these ITIs, whatever, 1,000 of them across the country, and you'll train these barbers. But that's not where the barbers' skills lie. That ITI is not where the barber's skills are. The barber's skills are with the barbers. So I said to him, why don't you do this? Why don't you set up certification centers? And then go to every single barber in India and say, listen, this is what we'd like you to train. For every guy you send to our certification center, we'll give you X amount of rupees. So let's say you have, whatever, 1 million barbers in India. And you go to 1 million barbers and you say, listen, you guys have the skills. We want to train barbers. And now start training barbers. And for every guy you train, send him to the certification center. And the moment we find that he's certified and he has been sent by you, we pay you. How long will it take you to 1 million barbers? 2 months? 3 months? Right? He just looked at me as if I was crazy. Right? Because for him, the skill isn't there. The skill isn't the ITI. But actually the skill is with the barbers, with the plumbers, with the carpenters. Those guys have the skill. That's the skill network. So why are you not using it to train? Just recently I was driving past Sultanpur and I walked up to this shoemaker. It was amazing because the guy says to me, I said, what's your biggest problem? He says, I've been working here for 40 years and nobody has ever respected me. So he says to me, the only man who has ever respected me is my father. Right? So I was thinking about this. And then he says to me, there was this scheme. And they said that, they've got this scheme for shoemakers. It was in Lucknow somewhere. So he says, so I, went to Lucknow. And I said, so what did they do? They said, they're going to teach me how to make shoes. He says, but I've been making shoes for 40 years. And I could teach those people how to make shoes. Right? So it's a fundamental disconnect with where the skills are. There's no shortage of skills in India. There's shortage of respect of skills in India. So you want to find the best carpenters in the world, they're sitting in India. But nobody respects their skill. Nobody actually tells them we believe in you and we want you to build something. Right? So you can't build industry without respecting skill.
Thank you. Maybe we are in time for one last question. So the lady here in the stripes, can we mic to her? And I request our ISA officers to come on this side, please, on the stage, while we do that.
So as we all know, the female labor participation in India is quite abysmally low, and no country can ever progress or become developed with only 50% of their population working. So what would Mr. Gandhi's plan be for increasing our labor participation of women?
It's not just labor participation. It starts with a bad attitude that Indian males have towards women. And I don't mean every single Indian male, but a large number of Indian males' attitudes towards women is just, it's ridiculous, right? So it starts there. And it's a particular way of thinking about women. And we see it in the political system, we see it in the business system, we see it everywhere. So I'm very big, number one, on political participation of women. Reservation bill to start with. Ensuring that women get into business. Ensuring that women are supported financially if they want to open their business, and then making sure that it is made easier for women to participate, right? Women have their own particular issues that you need to take care of before they can start to participate. So I think the first thing is of thinking of women the same way you think of men, right? That they can do anything men can do, if not better, and that they are equal and better in many, many things. Yeah. Also, by the way, this is part of the ideological fight between the BJP and us, right? The BJP and the RSS believe that women should be restricted to a particular role. They should stay at home, they should cook the food, they should not talk too much, right? And we believe that women should be allowed to aspire to whatever they want to do.
Well, Mr. Gandhi, if I just say that it was great having you on campus, that is a big, big understatement. But can we give him a round of applause?